Thank you guys so much for being here and for being willing to share about your marriage with us. And let's just start by talking about how you met.
So I came back from Afghanistan in 2012 and wasn't really in the right mind frame for dating. I'd gotten out of a relationship, and a buddy of mine, about 2 weeks after I got back, was saying about how there's this woman that he wanted to set me up on a blind date for. Never even done a blind date. We went on a blind date. It was a whole bunch of fun. You were completely different than anybody I'd ever met before.
I remember what our first date was.
It was the Coliseum. You were drenched in sweat. You were running around like a crazy maniac. I thought it was awesome. Then we went out to dinner. You ate more than I ate. I was like, yep, she's the one for me. Yep, okay. I remember it vividly. You're in a green shirt.
Yes. Okay.
We were dating for 2.5 years. We were engaged for just under 5 months, and we've been married for just under 8 years. We'll be married for 8 years in March. We have 2 adorable, crazy little girls. Isabella is coming up on 3, and then Noelle is 9 months.
Through all the years of him knowing me, and my mom had been battling cancer, and then 2 weeks before our scheduled wedding, my mom had passed away from her cancer.
We had gotten engaged on your birthday, and then we had plans for a 1.5 year long engagement, and that's when we had found her mom's breast cancer came out of remission, and that's where hospice had came in. We just, through a
It all happened very fast.
very traumatic Friday, one singular day, we went from mom's not doing well, we're still engaged, to getting married that night in hospice room. So we got through, I mean, the Lord worked everything together, but we were able to get married on Friday night before she passed that Sunday, so just 2 days later.
I was not a believer when Daryl and I first met. The kindness and the gentleness that I've never really experienced in a previous relationship really drew me to him and allowed me to eventually work on letting down a lot of walls that I had built up from previous relationships. Just the willingness of him to listen and talk on our first date, I was just like, I can't let this guy go. And I pretty much, I know it's cliche, but fell in love with him when we first met. And then you couldn't shut us up after that.
My upbringing was, I use the term hallmark, it was almost perfect in the sense we grew up in a little bit of the country in Dillsburg. My parents have been married for over 45 years at this point, and they were Christians since I've known them. They were Christians early on in their relationship, and just raised us in the church. My dad is a very strong yet sensitive man that can teeter the line of both strong and courageous, and yet meek and mild when he needs to. My mom is very much always supported him and loved him, took care of the home, but is always very strong in her opinions, and they were very much a team together of going back and forth. Almost sometimes to the point where their marriage seemed so perfect that later on in our relationship, I didn't know how to deal with conflict because I never saw conflict, whether they didn't have much or they were just that good at keeping it behind doors.
I am a triplet, and I have a brother and a sister, and then I also have a younger sister that was later. Our parents did not last very long in their marriage. They were divorced before we were 1 or 2. What I remember growing up was just constant conflict and fighting, and just there was always just an uneasiness with my parents and the relationship that we had, because there was always something else going on. Once we finally moved in with my dad, that did give me a bit more steadiness, because we lived there until high school, but then unfortunately my stepmom and dad did get separated divorce, I felt like there was always this constant, like, on my toes, like, not really sure what to be ready for next. And so I really don't feel like I got to be a kid growing up. Then my mom also struggled with, like, mental illness, so she had bipolar disorder that she was trying to manage while also dealing with her cancer and stuff. And so there was just, like, the atmosphere of growing up was just, there was no hallmark in my growing up. That was actually maybe like a blessing, because her parents were, it was just kind of a normal home. Like, they had their, fights and stuff, but they loved each other, and her mom, the way that she was there, for her, there was just something there. And I think that's when I kind of first realized that I had, like, missed out on something as growing up. So I thought that it was the greatest thing ever. Whenever I met him and I met his parents and their family, I just so much wanted to be, like, adopted and loved by them. And I am, and I'm just so grateful for that. And ultimately, his mom is the one that was there when I did accept Christ into my heart. So there were a lot of family dinners that we would have, and since I was living back and forth with different friends through college, whenever I would come home for long Thanksgiving breaks or long breaks, they would allow me to stay in, like, an extra bedroom. And so it was just really a really special time for me to spend holidays and to have family dinners and just all of these things that I was longing for growing up, that now I was able to, like, be a part of. It's just something I never thought I would have. So it's just been a really awesome experience for me, and it's nice to, while no one will ever replace, my mom, I know that I can go to Tanya for really anything, and she's there to just love me and hold me, and so I'm really blessed for that.
For me, it went from, we would have normal conflict, we would disagree on something, and I had to resolve it. And I didn't even realize that in the beginning, but I realized later on, that I would try and get closer. And I had to fix the problem, or we had to fix the problem before we could move on, because conflict was something bad. Conflict was not in my parents' marriage. So if it wasn't there, then it shouldn't be in mine. So I would run to her and try and force her to get happy and fix it and come to a conclusion. And that was probably one of the worst things that I did in the beginning.
I would try to run away and find a space where I could, process what was going on and how I was feeling. And the fact that I actually had someone, like, pursuing me was also, like, was a new feeling. I wasn't sure I wanted it, but, knowing I loved him and I wanted this relationship to work, but at the same time, I had no experience on how to, like, resolve what we were going through. I just felt like usually it was just a lot of screaming, and which is what I was used to, and I'm like, you just scream whatever you want and then you go away and you move on to the next thing.
Definitely, I would say you used to dominate the volume.
Yeah.
I had moments where it went from, I have like a 0 to 100% anger issue now and then, where it was like, I am calm and collected through everything. You can push my buttons, but you push the final button, and I can explode in a non-reasonable, nonsensical, bringing up things that just make no sense or don't matter at all. But those were probably few and far between.
Yeah. Oh, for me, yeah. That was my go-to. Mostly, I think, in the beginning especially, we just would let things kind of dissolve, and then we would just move on and act like nothing happened.
Yeah, it would be very quiet for a long period of time, and just kind of both stewing and getting more and more angry until one of us would come back to the other person, or we would just let it dissipate and kind of sweep it under the rug, if you will.
And usually it was him coming to me and just saying, like, I'm sorry, even if he didn't do it. He was just saying, I'm sorry. And then I would be like, of course you're sorry, you know, and then we move on. Then what happened was we would get into conflict, and he would start spewing all of the things that he let go, you know. So we realized that we weren't actually resolving anything. We were just kind of passing by. Especially when he uses the words always and never. Those words really get me going. Because I know that, and he knows that's not true. I don't always do that, or I never. And so I think also having little children helps bring down that volume, because then they start yelling at you and you're like, okay, you know.
Asking for forgiveness, which even as adults, like, we're trying to teach our daughter how to ask for forgiveness, and it's so hard for her. It's probably harder for us, honestly, to just say, you know what, I thought I was right, but I wasn't. You were right, or we were both wrong and both right at the same time. But it's not about, again, me winning the argument. It's not about it. That no one ever benefits from trying to win an argument. One of the biggest changes I've been trying to implement is that I pray before I come in the house. I am praying for the Spirit to give me strength, because I want to do the things that she asks of me, and I want to be there. But I have been working all day, and I am tired, and there's sometimes an emotional, a mental burden, and a physical burden. But God is the one that gives me the energy to do it and joyfully do it. So I get tired, but I won't stop praying for the energy and the desire to do that. The world is going to tell you there's two ways to be, and it's either be authoritarian, be overly aggressive, masculine in the wrong kind of way, or the opposite, where it's be passive, let either your wife or just take a back seat to everything. And I don't think the Bible calls either of those correct. I think the Bible, and Christ specifically, has the right middle ground, where Christ could be strong and firm. He's always strong and firm, but he could turn over tables when he had to. But at the same time, he would welcome the little children. He would be soft and gentle, and that you don't need to be one or the other, but we're called to be both, and that applies directly into your marriage. There's a time where I may have to step in front of her and defend her honor, her life, whatever, defend my children. But at the same time, I have the same shoulder that can defend her, that she can cry, and that I'll be there with her for.
A willingness to change your habits, those things that make you feel safe, or the tactics that you've used to kind of push through those hard times, or those relationships that haven't been easy. I think that would be the biggest thing, is a willingness to change, and the change that the Holy Spirit will do in you if you reach out and pray and allow, because a lot of these changes, they're not going to be easy, and you're not going to be able to do them on your own.
Our marriage is most fruitful when she and I are both pursuing Christ, and we're pursuing each other, and we can both enjoy things more when I'm leading and yet still there for the kids, for her, when she needs and how she needs, and being willing to ask her and listen, not fix things, and say, what do you need from me? Can I do this for you? Instead of just assuming I know.
Going through all of those things, it could have been easy for us to or for me to pull away from the Lord and just say, like, how dare you have all of these things happen after all of the things I've gone through. And I thought, like, I had found, like, I almost kind of let him be my savior from, like, he pulled me from all of these things in my childhood, and I was on this track to have, like, this beautiful marriage, and was selfishly had this vision of what that was going to look like. And then we had all of these things happen, And by the grace of God, like, I go now looking back and even going through all of those things, yes, there was immense sadness and a lot of processing on our part, but God doesn't say that our life on this earth is going to be perfect.
Especially in those beginning years, it was kind of the laying down of yourself and realizing that this other person is on your team and that you both have a purpose to glorify God and not to be the winner of an argument, not to be the one that's right in the end. So it really, if we did not have Christ and being of our relationship and that singular purpose, I don't know where we would be at this point.
I still almost 8 years married, and I still just I can't realize that I'm married to a man that would say something like that, and also just his never-ending pursuit of me. Like, he hardly grows tired of doing that and loving me well.
It was terrifying and fun.